What if I told you every day you could be literally walking over lost coins and jewelry, relics, gold, and possibly even lost treasure? Metal detecting is one of the most exciting hobbies you can get involved with, but only if you know what you're doing. If you want to find cool stuff, avoid beginner mistakes, and actually start enjoying the hobby, then keep watching this video. In this video, I'm going to help you choose the right metal detector and accessories, learn how to use them correctly, and do the research to go find your own places to hunt where you can start finding some really awesome stuff. So before we start talking about metal detectors and accessories that go with, I want to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got started in metal detecting. My name's Andrew Benson. I've been metal detecting for over 40 years. I got started, my dad got me into it. He was a multi-line metal detector dealer as I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. So he got a lot of different metal detectors. I got to try a lot of them. He'd take me to parks and houses and campgrounds and stuff like that, and we'd go out and find stuff. Now, I would get disinterested after about 10 minutes being an 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid, and so I'd usually just go off and wander around, do my own thing. But one day, we went to our city park, and they were doing construction there. They were putting in a volleyball pit, and they had taken off about 6 inches of ground. So I went over there. My dad was off hunting in the park somewhere else. I went over there with my white 6dB, and I started going over this place where they'd taken the dirt off, and I got this good signal that read high on the meter. It's read in the silver range, and I dug down, and 1 inch below the surface, I get this barber quarter. First barber quarter I'd ever found. I was so excited, I ran over to my dad to show him what I found. He came over, I told him where I found it. He started hunting around with his metal detector, and he found a seated Liberty dime. Now this barber quarter is the thing that really got me excited with metal detecting. Now I'd found other silver coins at times up to that, but they weren't this old. This was like the beginning of my real interest in metal detecting. So as far as metal detectors go, now there are a lot of brands out there, some you've never heard of, especially if you get on Amazon. There's all sorts of inexpensive name brand metal detectors like this one here, Dr. Otech. Don't go buy the first thing you see. Do a little bit of research. There are some major brands out there like XP, Nokta, Minelab, Garrett, Fisher. So when you choose your first metal detector, the first thing you need to consider is where you're going to be using it. Are you just interested in getting started at parks? Do you have a friend that likes to relic hunt or go to the beach and hunt? Those are things you're going to need to take into consideration when you choose a metal detector. And then you need to kind of decide on a budget too. You know, if you're not willing to spend probably, you know, upwards of $400 to $500 for a metal detector and accessories, it's going to be hard to get into this hobby and be satisfied, I think. Now, I'm not saying that you can't buy an inexpensive metal detector and go out and find stuff. I'm just saying that you would probably enjoy it more if you spend a little bit more money on a metal detector. As far as metal detectors go, I did a video on a $200 metal detector in comparison to this Dr. Otech. It's in my playlist. I'll also try to put a link or an end screen at the end of the video. You can go watch that. But Minelab makes the Minelab Vanquish, $199. Good metal detector that'll allow you to hunt in most places. If you're going to hunt at beaches, you might need a metal detector that's waterproof. You're also going to want something that works in the saltwater sand. You've got to have something that's multi-frequency. Something like this Minelab Exterior Elite. This comes in at about $479. They also make a Pro Pack that puts it over a little over $500. There's also the Nokta Triple Score. Now, if I've got another video that I'll put in the end screen. It's my choice of the 5 best metal detectors in 2025 under $500. The Nokta Triple Score was my number one pick. But you've got to consider where you're going to go. So do you need waterproof? Do you need multi-frequency because you're going to hunt at a beach? Do you have mineralized ground? Now that's a tough one because you might not know if you have mineralized ground. That's where you're going to want to check with other people to find out if you have mineralized ground, because if you do, you're going to need a detector that can handle that. you know, if you're interested in gold prospecting, that's a whole different metal detector. So if you're just interested in going to a park, there are a lot of metal detectors out there that are going to work for you that are fairly reasonably priced. You're going to need to do some of your own research. This is just to get your eyes opened up to what you might need when you go out and start looking at metal detectors. So I'll just name a few of them that you can take a look at. There's the MindLab Vanquish series. There's the Nokta Triple Score, or the Score series. There's also the Nokta Simplex series that you can take a look at. Garrett's got a number of metal detectors that do just fine in that setting. The Ace series, there's like 250, 350, 450, and then they got the Ace Apex. MindLab has got a number of machines that are in the lower price range. You've got the Xterra Elite, you've got the Xterra Pro. Now, if you want to go to ocean beaches, you're going to have to kick it up a bit. You're going to have to get something that works in an ocean beach setting, saltwater beach setting. Those are going to be requirements like multi-frequency, possibly waterproof if you want to get in the water. Now, again, the Vanquish series by MindLab will work at the beach, but they will not work in the water because they're not waterproof. You can get the coil wet, but you can't get the control box wet. Same thing goes for Nokta Score series. Those will all work at the beach. They are waterproof. But the Simplex series is single frequency. It's going to struggle a little bit at the beach. MindLab also has the Xterra Elite. That is the machine right here. It's multi-frequency. It's also waterproof. And then as far as Garrett goes, you've got the Apex, which is not waterproof, and you've got the Vortex, which is waterproof. Those will both work on the beach. Of course, you can go to XP, but they are more expensive. So for a beginner, I would say stick with these ones that I've already mentioned: Garrett, Nokta, and MindLab. Now, if you want to relic hunt, a lot of the times those are going to be situations where you're in an open field. You might want to get a metal detector that's got a bigger coil. So some of these coils come standard with coil sizes like this one, 9 by 12 I believe it is, and so does the Score. But you can buy accessory coils that are 11-inch round, which might be a little bit better for depth. And in relic hunting situations, sometimes that's what you need is depth, because you're hunting in plowed fields. Now, if they're being turned all the time, there's always fresh stuff coming to the surface. Some of the times you're hunting in pasture, where pasture, you're looking for deeper stuff and you might want a bigger coil, or an even bigger coil that gives you a lot of coverage, like the one I've got here on the MindLab Manicore. This is a 12 by 15 coil. That gives you a lot of coverage and a little bit better depth. So those are just some ideas. Now, we'll just make one quick comment about gold prospecting, because some of you might be interested in getting into that. And so that's going to require either a gold specific metal detector or one that's got gold prospecting modes on it, and you're usually going to have to pay a little more money for those. Now, they do have gold specific metal detectors that start at about $700 and go up, and they do make metal detectors that have got prospecting modes on them, like the MindLab Manicore here, but it's an $1,800 machine. You've also got the Nokta Legend. That's a really good one that's got a prospecting mode on it, and I think it starts at about $650, $700. And then if you get into areas that are highly mineralized, you might have to get a pulse induction machine like the Garrett Axiom to do gold hunting. So those are all some considerations that you need to look out before you actually go out and buy a metal detector. And in my opinion, you should spend the most amount of money that you can for a metal detector and accessories that go with it that your budget will allow. So now let's get into accessories. There are a number of accessories that you can buy. Some of them are not needed. You can go out with just the metal detector and find stuff, but it might be a little bit difficult. One of the things is headphones. Does the metal detector that you're buying come with headphones, or is that something that you're going to have to purchase afterwards? So you can get some inexpensive plug-in headphones for as little as $30. Some of these metal detectors come with headphones, like the Nokta Triple Score. So for just under $500 with the Nokta Triple Score, you get headphones, 2 coils, and some of them I've seen that have actually got a pinpointer with them too. If you don't have headphones and you do buy one of these newer machines that's got wireless capabilities, you could be spending extra money for a set of wireless headphones. Now, those range in price from $100 to $150 or so. The other thing that you're going to need to consider is some sort of a digging tool. So Some metal detectors have packages that have digging tools. This is a nice one that you can use in the park setting where you're not digging too deep, and possibly, you know, like old home sites and things like that. It makes it so you can cut a plug and get the item out of the ground. And you know, when you're digging stuff down to about 6-7 inches, these do just fine. Digging a little bit deeper and you're relic hunting and stuff, you might want something like this that you can put your foot down on and get through tough grass and stuff like that and dig a deeper hole. And then you may even want to consider just a regular garden shovel if your environment allows it. You know, if you're in an open field, you're not on somebody's lawn, or you're not at a park digging up lawn, then you could use a garden shovel in an area like, you know, an open field or a pasture. And then if you're at the beach, if you're just in wet sand, a shovel will do, but you might want to consider a beach scoop. So those are some of the digging tools. Now, if you're just getting started and you're going to a park and you're just digging shallow stuff, you can get away with a standard blade screwdriver. You know, just cut a little slit in the ground and pop the coin out. But in order to do that, brings me to my next thing, which is pinpointers. So as far as pinpointers go, there's a number of them out here. You can get them for as little as $50, but a little nicer ones are going to cost you a little more, anywhere from $100 to $150. Fisher makes one. This is an XP made one, but Garrett, Nokta, they all make pinpointers. And then this kind of cool one here is the Pulse Dive. Now the Pulse Dive is actually a combination between an you can use this underwater to, you know, like scuba dive and find stuff, but the end of this comes off and you can use it as this part of it's a pinpointer. So I think this runs a couple $100, but that's an option. Now the thing about pinpointers is it makes it easier to find stuff. If you're going deep and you've got a really deep target and you're not sure exactly where it is in the hole, then you can use a pinpointer to get down there and find out exactly where it is so you can pop it out. Also works good if you're finding shallow coins in a yard or something, and just to pinpoint right where it is so you can just flip it out with a screwdriver. And the same thing with like parks. You know, you get a deep hole, you want to find out if it's in the pile of your dirt or if it's down in the hole. It makes it easy, quick recovery. Another thing you would maybe want to consider is a fines pouch. So this is something you can put your fines in. Now this one here goes around your waist. This is actually for water hunting. The water can drain out the holes here. You can put all your garbage and stuff in the one area, and then in the other pocket you can put your real nice stuff. And then you can use this on nice ground, on dry ground too, but they do make some that have got pinpointer holders and, you know, a place to put your scoop and all that kind of stuff. But a fines pouch might be something, and then a fines case is something nice to have too. So you can use something as easy as a little tackle box. Most of them are tackle boxes, and then just cut some foam, put in there to kind of guard your fines. But what you don't want is silver coins and nice buttons and stuff like that in your pocket with your keys and your other stuff just getting all scraped up and destroyed. A lot of the buttons have a tendency to just fall apart when you get them out of the ground. So those are some accessories that you would want to consider. So as far as accessories go, I mean, you could spend anywhere from, you know, as little as $50 to $300. So you could easily surpass the amount of your metal detector if you're buying a less expensive metal detector like the Elite here, just with accessories, shovels and headphones, and, you know, because that doesn't come with headphones, and a pinpointer and all that kind of stuff. Before we get into how to operate your metal detector and know what the different signals and stuff sounds like that, we're going to go outside for that. I want to just tell you a quick story about the first gold coin I found. So this is a $5 gold coin. I'll put it up on the screen. It's a 1901. I found this at a resort. The way I came across this was, there was this resort that we went to, and we would always walk past where everyone would park, and on our way out to where, you know, all the activity took place, where all the concession stands and the rides and all that kind of stuff took place. So we were always parking, walking right through this area out to where, you know, all the activity took place. And obviously we found a bunch of coins out there, but and I did have a friend that found a gold coin out there. But one day, as this area was starting to get more and more depleted, I started working my way back. And so this one day I was out hunting with a Mine Lab Explorer, and I got this signal. I could tell it was deep. It was so deep I couldn't quite tell if it even was a signal. And so I took a scoop of ground out and I went over it again, and it didn't get any better, but I thought, hey, I haven't really got anything today. I'm just going to keep digging. So I dug down, and on my last scoop out of the hole, I saw this gold glint roll across the dirt, and I looked at it. I was like, holy crap. I immediately knew it was a $5 gold coin. My father-in-law and my brother-in-law were both with me. They were 50 or so yards off. I picked it up and I yelled, $5 gold coin! And they came running over to look at it, and that was honestly one of the most exciting experiences I've had metal detecting to that point. Now, this took place in 2016, I believe, so it wasn't too long ago, almost 10 years ago. I never thought in ever would I find a gold coin. So that just goes to prove that you can find, there's still gold coins out there to find. I didn't have the attitude that I was ever going to find one, but after I did find this one, then I knew it was possible to find gold coins. They were still out there and they still existed. And so I have since found many more gold coins by doing research and understanding how my metal detector works. So we're going to go outside right now real quick, and we're going to go over, I'm going to use the Xterra Elite as an example. This Xterra Elite has enough settings that it'll allow you to understand what's going on with a lot of the other ones. So, you know, one of the things that you're going to have is there's a lot of different terms out there. There's like iron bias, silencer, iron filter, stabilizer, recovery speed, reactivity, sensitivity, audio tones, audio filters. There's all these different terms that might be confusing as a beginner to understand what they do and how they affect your metal detector. So we're going to go over some of that stuff in the yard. Let's go out right now. We'll go over some coins to show you how they sound on this particular metal detector, some of the settings that are available. It's got more of the common settings that you're going to find on less expensive metal detectors. As you get into more expensive metal detectors like the Manicore and whatnot, you're going to have different features that are available on those. But this Minelab Elite's got quite a few of the more common ones, and we'll go over those. So let's go outside and we'll take a look right now. Okay, let's go over the Minelab Xterra Elite. This is a machine that you can buy for $479 for just what you see here, or if you want to get their Pro Pack, it comes with an extra coil and headphones for $599. So first thing you notice when you turn this machine on is it's a little bit noisy. So on this one they have what they call noise cancel. So to noise cancel it, you go to the first setting here and you hit the check minus button, and that's going to try to find the quietest channel. If that doesn't work, you can go back to your main screen and decrease the sensitivity. Okay, so first thing we see here is, when we're looking at the detector, is these different hunt modes. Now we've got park, we've got field, and we've got beach. So there's a 1 and a 2 in each one. Generally speaking, Park 1, Field 1, Beach 1 is going to be more geared towards higher conductive targets like dimes, quarters, pennies, stuff like that. Anything that has a 2 is going to be weighted towards lower conductive targets like nickels, gold rings, and small lower conductive targets. Now I have the ability to connect headphones, but I don't have any. If I wanted to, I would hit this. I've got a backlight option here. But let's go through some of the settings. So next thing we got here is ground balance. In order to ground balance your machine, you need to find a clean area, which I'm not sure this is a clean area, but we'll do it anyway. And you hit the check minus button and pump it up and down. Now I can also manually adjust this. Okay, our next option is volume, and this is the speaker volume on the unit. If I hold it down, I can change my iron volume. Now the iron volume is the ability to hear nails and things that are made out of iron, whereas your other volume is just your overall volume. And this will all make sense as we go through it. So this is your threshold. If you turn it up, you can hear the machine hum. You can decide whether or not you want to hunt with a threshold. Now, if you ever want to know if there's a hidden feature under one of these options, just hold the gearbox down. If there is one, it'll go to it. If there isn't one, it'll beep at you. So the next thing is our number of tones. AT means all tones. DP means deep. So deep is the difference between all of your targets sounding the same regardless of depth versus them being different. So on DP, a shallower target would sound louder, a deeper target would sound softer. And then we've also got 5 tones, 2 tones, and 1 tone as our audio option. So I personally like all tones. It can be a little bit confusing for beginners, so you might want to start on like 5 tones or something, but we're going to leave it on all tones for now. And then again, if we want to find out if there's something in the sub menu, you can hold the gearbox down, and there's not on this one. So hit the gearbox to go to the next thing. This is where you can decide what targets you want to accept and reject. Right now we've got all the way up to -16 rejected, which is your iron. And if you want to see if there's a sub menu, you can. And so this is where you can go out and discriminate out more targets. Main menu, we just hold that down. So the one thing I wanted to point out, so on this one we're doing jumps of 4 targets at a time. If you get into some of the better machines, the machines that have more options, or like the Manicore, you can actually notch these out 1 at a time. But on this one, you're taking out 4 targets at a time, or 4 IDs at a time. So we go back here, and then we go to our last one. Now this is recovery speed. Now recovery speed, these last 2 are going to be some of your most confusing and probably most important. So this is recovery speed. Now this particular metal detector has 1 through 3 speeds. 2 is a good middle of the ground. If I lower my recovery speed, I'm going to get deeper, but I'm not going to be able to detect adjacent targets next to each other as well. If I go higher, I'll be able to detect adjacent targets close to each other better, but I'm going to lose depth. So that is one to study, because that will affect how deep and how well you do in targets that have close proximity to each other. I most of the time leave it on 2, but it depends on the site. I may change it. Then if you hold this down, you're going to go to what they call iron bias. Now iron bias is the ability of the machine to decipher iron from a good target. Now the lower your iron bias, this is important, the better at unmasking targets next to iron it's going to be. The higher that you go, which this one goes up to 2, the more biased it will be against iron. So you won't get as much falsing. The targets that you do detect will most likely be a good target versus iron, but there's a trade-off. So I would say as a beginner, you probably want to run that higher so that you're not digging as many bad targets, but when you get more advanced, you can run it down. I usually leave mine at -1 because I want to be able to hear everything, and I want to be able to unmask most things that are out there. And so that's the last of your menu system. And then when you get into here, you can change, this is your frequency change. So on this particular machine, we got multi, which is the open square box, or we've got 15 kilohertz. Now other machines have different options. I will most of the time run multi because it does better at distinguishing targets from the ground or from iron than a single frequency does, in my opinion. But you may get into a situation where the EMI, which is the noise that we heard in the beginning, is so bad that you have to run the single frequency. So we're going to leave that in multi. You've got the horseshoe button here, which right now we're discriminating out iron. If I push that, we're going to accept everything so that we can hear iron. As a beginner, I would probably not want to listen to the iron. And we'll go over how to tell good targets from bad in just a minute here. And then finally, you've got your pinpoint button, and this is how you pinpoint a target. Generally speaking, it's going to be center of the coil, long way and wide. Center it, and there are targets below. So one thing I would suggest when you're a beginner is you lay out a bunch of targets to listen to and take note of the ID that's on them. Now we're going to open the horseshoe up because I do have an iron nail and I want you to hear what that sounds like. But I've got a penny, a dime, a quarter, a nickel, and I've got some Civil War artifacts, which may not be easy for you guys to get. And then I got a couple of junk targets. I got a nail, and I've got a piece of foil and a pull tab, and then I've got a nail next to a dime over here. So first thing you'd want to do is go over and get familiar with what your machine sounds like over these particular targets and what target ID registers. So here's a penny. Next we got a dime. Notice the dime's a little bit higher. Now we got a quarter. Higher still. When we get to the nickel, it's going to drop way down. It's a low conductive target. And then we've got a pull tab sitting here, square pull tab, kind of close to the nickel range. Now I've probably got, my ground is polluted, which means I've got a bunch of roofing nails and stuff, so target ID might not be totally accurate, because normally a nickel reads around 27. And then we got a piece of foil. Notice how low that reads. Then I've got a small pewter button laying here. It's basically like an underwear button. Notice how low it is. We got a round ball, like a musket ball. And then we've got a 58 caliber mini ball. Okay, then I've got an iron nail laying here on the ground. Notice that it's mostly reading negative, but it does have this chirp off the end. So the one thing I see a lot of people doing is trying to make that a good target. So they hear that chirp, and they want to dig that as a beginner. Now you're going to want to dig some of these, but a trick is turn on it. Might get better. In this case it doesn't, but like I say, I got a lot of roofing nails in here, but it's not anything I can grab onto like the penny. See how I can grab onto the penny? Now the other thing you got to remember with these newer machines is these are motion machines. The coil needs to be in motion. You can't just hold it over the target. I see that happen a lot with new people. They don't move the coil. They try to just hold it over it. Now in pinpoint mode, you can do that. There's your target. Okay. And then we've got a nail next to a dime here. So now notice how this does not sound real good. Now I can turn my iron off, and I can get a little bit better signal on that. And if I turn on it, see how that improves that one direction? So those kind of targets are going to be tricky, and that's something you're going to have to learn over time. Turning on targets, you know, sometimes you'll turn on a target, it ends up being a nail still, and even though it sounds good. Or other times you'll turn on a target and it sounds good one direction but goes away. Could be a good target anyway. I'll give you one example. Just this last summer I was at a place where I got on the Manicore, which this has the same ID scale as the Exterior Elite, I got a weird sound of 57. I started to walk away from it, and then I thought, there's some old stuff here, I better stop and dig it. So I dug it, and lo and behold, a 57 ended up being a seated quarter next to, well, in a bunch of nails. Now a quarter normally is way high, so we're talking way low compared to what it should have read. Okay, I almost forgot to show you the most important part, and that was what happens with iron bias. So we had it on -1 going over this nail, but if we raise it up to 2, sorry, there's a lot of stuff on the ground here. Now we're knocking out. Now we still got a little bit of a, but it's a lot better. There's a big head on that nail, and that's why it's falsing, but you can see that this way, when you turn the iron bias up, it does a lot better. Now, the dime next to the nail, we've got the iron bias at 2 instead of -1. Turn that horseshoe off. And it's still picking it up pretty good. Okay, so let's go in and change the... We're going to change the recovery speed now up to 3, the fastest. And then go back over. Okay, that's the fastest. Let's go versus the slowest. See, on the slowest setting, we can't even hardly pick it up that direction. Okay, now the other thing that I would encourage you to do is bury some targets in the ground, because they are going to sound different than targets sitting on top of the ground. So I've got 4 targets here buried. I might have trouble finding the nickel over here because it's winter and there was snow on it, and I tried to shovel it off. I think it's right in this area somewhere, but tried to shovel it off so that it would thaw out and I'd be able to see the target markers, or the markers for the targets. And so what I've got is a 6-inch dime, a 7-inch dime, a 9-inch quarter, and an 8-inch nickel. Now, depending on the type of ground that you've got, you might be able to pick those targets up deeper than that. So we're going to go over the 6-inch dime here, and if you remember, it was kind of a high signal sitting on top of the ground. You'll notice in this case, target ID is kind of all over the place, but that's due to the depth and due to the mineralization in the ground changing the target ID, but it's still a defined target. So you're going to want to dig those. Just because it doesn't stay on the ID for a dime, you're still going to want to dig that and find out what it is. And you'll learn that stuff over time. Now if we go to the little bit deeper dime, notice my target ID is really getting high now, up past the quarter. But still, it's a nice solid signal, so I'm going to dig it. And then we've got our nickel here. Now, as I said before, 1 and 2 are high conductive targets versus more weighted toward lower conductive. I'm in a lower conductive weighted target area right now on the, as far as park hunting goes, and you can see that I'm picking up that nickel pretty good. So what if I was to change it to 1, go over that nickel? Still pretty good, but notice that the target ID isn't as stable as when I'm in 2. Numbers are more closely spaced, and that's because I've got a lower weighted frequency on multi-frequency taking care of that. I would, unless I'm just hunting silver coins, I would probably use Park 2 or Field 2. And if you're on the beach, I would use Beach 2, because obviously you're going after gold rings there. Now here's the 8-inch quarter. Notice on this, it's reading way high, way higher than a nickel, a quarter should read. But because it's a solid ID, I would dig that. That's kind of how the machine works. What options are in there. Obviously, you're going to want to get out a user manual when you get your metal detector. Go out and try it. Watch some videos on it. But that's just how you would use this detector. And like I said before, very important for you to go out, find out what the sounds sound like, what the target ID comes up for your common things that you're going to be finding, and that's going to help you when you go out in the field, rather than just going out there and not knowing anything about the machine and just digging a bunch of crap. And remember, in the beginning, dig those solid targets, things that you know are going to be good. Don't try to make a good target out of a bad target. You can work into that as you get more proficient with your metal detector. Okay, now we're going to talk about where you can hunt, where you can legally use a metal detector. We're going to do this part before we get into doing research and going over how to find places to hunt, because if you do all the research and then find out that you're on an area that you can't hunt, it makes little sense to go to that point. So where can you hunt? Now, they're private land, obviously, which most of the East Coast is. East, Midwest, and East is a lot of private land. Out West, we don't have as much private land. But when it comes to private land, get permission from the property owner. And it might even be a good idea to get written permission. And when you get written permission, you might want to discuss what could possibly be found on the property and how you're going to split it up, or what portion of that is the property owner going to get. Those are all good things to go over before you actually go out and hunt and find something. It'd be horrible to go out and find a treasure on this person's property and not have some prearrangement of how that's going to be split up. Now, if you're just going on somebody's yard, that's probably not a big deal, your neighbor or whatever. I have had neighbors where I didn't have some sort of an agreement up front, and then when I go show them what I found, they're like with their hand out, give it all to me. So you don't want to get discouraged if that happens. Just be aware that may happen. Private property, get permission. Then you've got public property. So you've got national parks. National parks are a no-no. You cannot hunt on national parks at all. National recreational areas are the same way. You cannot hunt on them. State by state, you've got state parks. Now, state parks can vary one from the other. You usually need a permit or some sort of written note or something from the park ranger in order to hunt on those. I've got parks in my state in Utah where some parks you can hunt and some you can't. And a lot of the time, if there's anything that's considered personal, you're required to turn it in. Let's just say you went to a state park that had a beach on it and you found a ring. Well, you're required to turn that ring in, and they would then go to the trouble of trying to find the owner. If they can't find the owner, then of course you would get the item. But there are certain stipulations that you need to follow on that. You've got national forest. Now, national forest, I'm going to go over it here on the screen here, but basically, with national forest, you can go on there to do recreational metal detecting. Recreational metal detecting doesn't mean that you can go on a historic site that's within national forest, though. So if there's a historic site, there's a historical marker or whatnot, and it's generally known that's a historical site, it's best to stay off of it. BLM's kind of the same way. Now, BLM for gold prospecting, as long as there's not a claim, you can go hunt it. Recreational metal detecting on BLM property is also permitted. But again, if there is a known historic, if there's a known historic site there, then you need to stay off of it. If there's a historical marker, or if there's, they've got brown signs sometimes that say no metal detecting beyond this point, then you need to obey those and not go on them. Back east, there's a lot of battlefields and stuff. You do not want to get caught on a battlefield or a park back there with a battlefield. That's heavy fines and possibly jail time. They'll definitely take your metal detector and everything you found, and you're going to go to court and get some sort of a fine. Private property is your best bet. Going to private property or going to BLM property, if you are mostly going to be gold prospecting, is a good thing to do. Now, some of the places on Forest Service is campgrounds. Now, you may have to check with a campground host to see if they're going to allow it. Most of the time they are, but please cover your holes, because that's like the biggest thing. Biggest complaint anywhere is people not covering their holes. Regardless of where you go, cover your holes up. I don't care if you're out in the middle of the desert and there probably isn't going to be another person that sees that for 10 years. Cover your hole up. It's just good etiquette. And the other thing is, pick your junk up so that someone else doesn't have to find it, and so it cleans up the environment. But as far as getting on personal property, like let's just say you want to go to a home, door knock, whatever, you get permission. The other thing is know how to dig right. Don't take your garden shovel to dig in someone's yard. Take one of the smaller hand digging tools, make a nice plug. But if you make a nice plug that can be folded back and then folded down, there's not as much opportunity for the grass to die. Now parks are another thing, city parks. There are some city parks that you cannot metal detect in. Go to the park rules sign. It'll list it on there if it's allowed or not. If it's not allowed, don't do it. If it is allowed, a couple of tips. I would go early spring or late fall when the plug that you dig has least opportunity to die and leave evidence that you were there. Another nice thing to do is take a ground claw so you can get all your dirt up on it and not leave a big muddy mess around the hole. Put a ground claw up there, dump it all back in your hole, fold your plug down, push it down. If you're in the spring, you usually got a lot of rain. If you're in the fall, late fall, usually winter's coming on, the grass is dying anyway. If the plug dies, it'll regrow in the spring. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of metal detecting, and that's doing research, finding those good spots where you're going to find the good items. Most people don't want to share their spots with you. That's just human nature. If they've got a good spot they're going to, they don't necessarily want to take you and have you go back later and dig everything out of it before they can. So don't feel mad or sad or whatever that someone won't take you to their favorite spot. That's just human nature. It's like taking someone to your favorite fishing hole and then, you know, they come back the next weekend and take all the fish out of it. So before we get into research, though, I want to tell you a story. I go to hunts, digging in Virginia, back east in Virginia. It's on winter camping spots mostly for the Civil War soldiers between 1863 and 1864. So one spot we went to, which research comes into, is the organizer of the hunt had this book. And before we went on the hunt, he actually posted in it about where we were going to hunt. So this book is called 3 Years in the Sixth Corps, Army of the Potomac, 1861 to 1865. So this is during the Civil War. Now, at the time, this person was enlisted with the New York 77th. Now, the New York 77th had a camp that overlooked a river, and I forget which one it was, but the story's in here. So it's very detailed about them sitting up on this hill and being able to look down on the river and whatnot. And so the person that organized the hunt shared this story with us so that we knew where to go hunting. So that morning, me and a couple other guys, and you know, later on in the hunt, obviously everyone was up there. We hurried right up there, right up to where this story was talked about. And lo and behold, I found artifacts up there. So one of them here is a couple of them here are New York coat buttons from the Civil War. So that just proves that those soldiers were in that area by finding those New York coat buttons. And this one here is, I mean, it's almost brand new, like it came off yesterday. It was found in a really loamy area with a lot of leaves, and I mean, I just could not believe how well that thing came out. But that is just what research can do for you. And when you do the research and it all comes together with the finds that you find, I mean, there's nothing more satisfying than that. So now let's get into the research. So we're gonna look online here a bit. But before we get onto some of the sites that I use, I wanted to talk about books and things like that. So books can be great research items. I've got one here. It's called Fort Douglas, Utah. Now this is a fort that's in Salt Lake City. This is a book that covers 1862 when it was founded to 1991. Now we used to be able to go hunt that fort until it was sold off to the University of Utah. I guess the officer in command or museum curator both agreed that they would allow metal detectors up there. If we found something, we had to take it to the museum curator. He decided whether or not he wanted to keep it. Anything else, you know, we got to keep. So for years and years, we were able to go up there until it got sold off to the University of Utah, and then they put a stop to all that. Anyway, a lot of good information in books. Now, the thing about books is that if it's not a first-hand account, a lot of times things have the opportunity to get skewed. The story gets embellished and whatnot. And I'll give you a perfect example. So this is a book about Rush Valley. Now, Rush Valley is over the mountain from me. There was actually a military camp over there. The story that's told in this book is different from the story that's actually told in a first-hand account in a journal. So the thing that you can do when you're reading books is a lot of the times they give credits to where they got the information in the back of the books. It's a good idea to go to some of those books that are listed or credits that are listed and read the first-hand account yourself. So the thing that I found out in this particular case was that only part of the military camp was over in this particular area. Most of it was over the mountain, which is on private property. But the story that was passed down from generation to generation was that they all went over and they all camped in this one particular spot. But when you actually read a first-hand account of the people that owned the property that the soldiers, the actual soldiers, camped on, then you find out what the real story is. So those things can change. So things to use for research, in addition to what I'm going to talk about here in a minute, is books. You get general subject books. Diaries are another thing. And if you've heard of Ancestry.com, you can go even further into Ancestry.com, because Ancestry.com's got a lot of stories in it about individual people that are never going to be published in a book. These are stories that are entered by, people that are relatives of these people. So that's another good place to research. But you got to kind of follow the ant trail. The big major story, who was involved, then get down to that person that was actually involved and read their personal account, because the personal account, first-hand account, is the best account to go by. So now we're going to get into some other things, look at them on the computer. Things like Google Earth, LiDAR, how to look at who owns property and things like that. So let's jump on the computer real quick and we'll look at those. Okay, we're going to talk about some of the things I like to use as far as research goes on the computer. So first thing is Google Earth. So once I've done the research on an area, I've read the books, now I'm trying to find out if I can get on the place. Google Earth is a good place to start. So Google Earth, I've just got this place called Cascade Springs. Now this is an area in the mountains above us. It's just where people go and look at springs and whatnot. But I can see here that there's a parking lot, there's a trail that goes up around these springs, and so I'm not sure who owns this. Now, if I'm not sure who owns this, so the next thing I can do is I can get on what I like is on X, and I use their hunt part of it. And so the hunt portion of that, it is a paid subscription that you can download on your computer and on your phone. I think it's about $100 a year. I can't remember, but I've had it for a couple of years. And this is going to tell you who owns the property. So you can see here, we've got the state owns this part and the U.S. Forest Service owns this part. So it's possible that I could go up here with a metal detector and do some recreational metal detecting on this trail around the springs to see if anybody's lost anything. Now, to give you an example of what a private landowner looks like, they're here in the red or the orange, and if you click on it, it's going to give you the information here on who owns the property, and it tells who. Looks like this is actually another state-owned piece, but if it was a private person, it would show their address and where you can mail an inquiry to. So not going to include a phone number. You're either going to have to go door knocking to this particular address, or you're going to have to send them a letter and see if you can, go metal detecting in this area. Now, I've had minimal success with letters. It's better if you can actually go to the person's door and talk to them in person. But mailing a letter to try to get permission is an option. So once I've done that, let's go back to Cascade Springs. We're going to get on LiDAR. So LiDAR here is by the USGS. When you get on their site, you've got to choose. There's this little layers button here. You choose it. Now you can go through and you can choose what kind of view that you want. Layers list. So I usually always use this either multi-directional or hill shade. And then when you click on it, it gives you a LiDAR view, takes away all the vegetation. So Cascade Springs was right in here, and now you can see that you can see the topography of the ground rather than the actual all the foliage in it. So this is the parking lot, this is the trail that goes around the spring. Now, if we were hunting for, you know, a lost house or something, and we were looking for a foundation in, you know, a bunch of trees or whatnot, we could look for specific shapes. So, you know, a square or a circle maybe from a cellar, or you might even see a wall that's been built, and you can see that through the vegetation. So that's another really good thing to use is LiDAR, especially if you're in places back east, or even if you're in a field that's got a lot of grass. So now, just for example here, I see these two little, they don't look like maybe anything more than a shadow, but let's just say this right here where I'm circling my mouse is a divot. Now that could, you know, if we were looking at some place in an area that was populated and had a village there or something, or a town, then that could possibly be left from a basement or a cellar. So you would mark that on your Hunt on X app as a waypoint, and then you can find your way right there. So those are a couple of good tools that you can use. All right, now that we've gone over equipment that you need, research, where you can hunt, all that kind of stuff, how do we bring that all together? So what is reality when it comes to metal detecting? Well, the reality is that it can be frustrating. There are times that you can go out and you might not find anything all day long. You might do all the research for a place, and you go out, you think you've got the place pinned down. You go out there and there's nothing. I've just recently had experiences with that where me and 3 friends, which we'll get into in just a minute, did a bunch of research on some sites. It took us 3 days to actually find the place we were looking for. 3 days of going out metal detecting, walking miles and miles with a metal detector in front of us, trying to find this area. We did finally find it though. So reality is that you're not always going to find stuff. It can be frustrating. You're not always going to find good stuff. You might find modern coins and never find old coins, or at least not find old coins in the beginning. But getting to know your metal detector is key. Get to know your metal detector, then start going to some of these other sites. Now, as far as community support goes, we're talking about clubs and friends and things like that. That can also be frustrating. So you can go to clubs, join clubs, metal detecting clubs if you've got them in your area. Like I said before, those people may or may not be willing to share their sites with you, and it's for a good reason. They did all the research. They found these sites. They don't want to take you there and then have you come back the weekend after and dig everything up. And that's where good friends come in. So if you get into a good group where you have an agreement that we do the research together, and when we go there, we go together. We don't individually go unless, you know, someone in the group says, you know, there's no way I can go. I've got other obligations. You guys go ahead. So get that kind of an understanding up front, you know, and if you've got a friend that, or if you've got one of these hunting buddies that goes behind your back, then, you know, peel off from them. Go find some other people. So there's clubs that you can join. Obviously, there's YouTube videos that you can get on. You do your own research and be realistic about what you're going to find and when you're going to find it, and, you know, but I've had many times where I've, you know, been frustrated, gone out and think that I'm going to find some stuff, and you come home empty-handed, and that's just the way it is. Everybody, the metal detects, has those days. So just be aware of that. Be persistent in your research and in your learning of your machine, and if you're persistent and you keep going and you keep trying, eventually you're getting to the spot where you feel really comfortable metal detecting, and you're going to come across some great finds. So I hope all of that helps. I've got a playlist, like I said, that talks about metal detecting in general and how to pick a metal detector, and, you know, this versus that metal detector and whatnot that you can watch. I've also got the 2 end screens about the videos I talked about before, but I hope all that information helps, and if you've got any questions, please leave a comment. I'm happy to help you, other than giving you my, you know, the exact site where I go metal detecting, of course, but any general questions I'm happy to answer. So I hope this video helps, and I thank you for watching, and have a good day.